Ah, memories of Thanksgiving past. I still recall the intense graduation from child's table to adult table. It's mostly the delicious smells I remember: citrus, nuts, pumpkin pie, and roasting turkey or ham, all wonderful. Yes, there was always a small part of me that freaked out at the bounty of food, drink, and company. So much food. My parents, when I disputed the value of a food item, usually a vegetable, would often say, "You eat now, there are children starving," and then they'd fill in someplace in the world, though actually it was happening in our own town, I now know. I would often lobby my parents with this great idea that small kids had everywhere, but seemed so unique to me. Why don't we send all our Brussels sprouts and lima beans and obviously onions to Africa? Then as I grew up and became the liberal religious youth my churches, American Baptist and Unitarian, shaped me into, the dichotomy of our Thanksgiving rituals and the realities of how indigenous people were treated, I became more aware of how much pain is held there. My knowledge of how the US government systematically destroyed Native American lands and lifestyles weighs heavily on my mind. How can any of us celebrate a peaceful Thanksgiving with the myth of Indians and pilgrims, knowing the true history of how European settlers would treat the people whose land they wanted as their own? A friend sent me this meme recently. Be sure and bring up politics at your Thanksgiving dinner. It will save your money on Christmas gifts later. In this case, for me, it's kind of a painful reality. There are members of my own family who would probably refuse to break bread with me, others who would be glad to proselytize and bring me more fully into their camp of saved Christians, who they imagine as having a singular future more valuable than other religions. Of course, I miss all three of my siblings in Vermont, but in recent years I seem to find more of a family here at the UUSF facility and its community. Thoughtfully, for several years now, I've been graciously included at Amy Kelly and Merrick Munn's table for Thanksgiving. This year I went back to a feast held by ex-coworkers from a hotel here in the city. Their twins, who I remember as toddlers, are now in colleges. I often wonder where the time goes. But I started Thanksgiving Day this year by going by ferry boat to Alcatraz for the Indigenous Peoples Gathering sunrise ceremony. From November 1969 to July 1971, a group of American Indians took over and occupied Alcatraz Island. The group was called the Alcatraz Red Power Movement and was also known as the Indians of All Tribes. Since 1975, American Indians and non-native allies have journeyed from the mainland to Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay on Thanksgiving Day for this gathering. Previously, the day was called Unthanksgiving Day. My morning began on a packed ferry boat headed to Alcatraz. 5,000 would make the journey by the time the ferries were done running. The events began with Native families and their allies forming a large bonfire-lit circle, and then the rituals of dancing and singing and speeching stretched into the morning. This year, a group of Palestinians were invited to join. The sense of solidarity with them among us all was palpable. The whole morning was a powerful reminder of so much. We as a nation have been called upon to recognize the truths about our past, present, and future relationships with our indigenous siblings. Since childhood, what it means to be at the Thanksgiving table has had layers added to it each year. This year, the layers was a trip across the waters and a circle of remembering. I hope each of you had a great Thanksgiving and that many more may follow.